Married at First Sight and Afterparty, Season 18 and Episode 18. Oh, wow. Between the cat fights, lies, and surprise engagement, this episode was a mess. Hi, I'm Tamara, and this is Tamara Lynette Tells. Okay, they had way too many conversations. It was too much. Karla and Juancho, Camille and Thomas, Nancy Drew and Karla, Madison and her dad, Emem and Brandon, Juancho and Allen, Madison and David, Emem, Karla and Camille, Emem and her cousin and Brandon, plus 2 group get-togethers. Woo! Enough already. The marriages are over. So what story are you trying to tell us at this point? Because whatever it is, we're never going to see the ending. So Afterparty was an hour and it featured Juancho and Nancy Drew, plus Keisha's husband. Then the next hour, she had Thomas and Emem. I wanted to see Madison in one of these segments. I think Keisha would have done a good job getting answers out of her. The episode picked up where they left off last week, mid-stupid argument between Madison and Nancy Drew. And let me tell you, these two were not about to let this go. So, talking about Nancy Drew, David whispered to Madison, "She's saucy. I wouldn't even get into it." "Oh, we're in it now, sir. There's no turning back. Let's go." So Madison's whole argument was, "Why do you care if I'm with David? You don't even want him. You even said that that's not your man." Meanwhile, Nancy Drew was like, because you were lying to me for 2 months, smiling in my face while texting David behind my back. Like, don't you understand how that's not okay?" Madison was all smug. "I didn't lie. What did I lie about?" That response was ridiculous. She lied and purposely misled both Alan and Nancy. So Nancy was upset that Madison betrayed their friendship, while Madison was turning the argument into, "You didn't want David anyway." Those are 2 different topics. And it was like Madison forgot Alan was sitting in the room, because just a week before decision day, you told Alan you were considering saying a yes on decision day. But I think you forgot to mention the part where you were in love with David. All Madison did was deny everything and anything Nancy pointed out to her. She took no responsibility for her actions. I'm not saying Nancy Drew has been an upstanding citizen throughout this season, but in this moment, I think she was right. Regardless of how Nancy felt about David, Madison lied her butt off about their relationship. Pulling out her phone at the retreat to prove she doesn't have contact with David and denying they are more than just gym buds was all lies. Instead, Madison asked Nancy, "Why'd you do this?" Nancy said, "Are you sharding me? Are you living in La La Land? I didn't do it. You did." I was just as confused as Nancy when Madison said that. What did Nancy do to Madison? Expose her affair? Wear less eyeshadow than she did that day? Bring couscous to the potluck? I mean, I don't see it. And to be honest, at this point, I'm not Team Madison, nor am I Team Nancy Drew. I'm just here for the drama. So my girl, Karla, stepped in and said, "I don't think you all are communicating on the same frequency right now. You all are not on the same frequency." By the way, I thought she was having a wardrobe malfunction, but her nip slip was intentional. Someone commented about the dress she wore in the scene on social media. The commenter said, "Sorry, but no. Nice dress, but could have stayed classy," with a smiley face. And then Carla's reply to her was, "You wouldn't want to meet me in real life then." Then she wrote, "If my nipples offend you, save your energy and keep it to yourself. If you know me, my titties are always out. Free the nipple. Peace." But I digress. Carla talked about them being on a different frequency. Then David decided to end the argument, or rather run from it, by saying he wanted to talk to Madison privately, only to immediately turn around and tell the whole group they were leaving. And as they walked away, Madison was giggling like a high school mean girl down the steps, like she had just did something like win the fight she just lost. So when they were alone, David thanked her for what she was trying to do upstairs with Nancy Drew. Then they kissed. And remember, they told the experts they have only hugged up to this point. So this was allegedly their first kiss. Now, Madison looked at the boxing ring and said, "Put me in the ring with Nancy Drew. She won't last 2 seconds." How funny she mentioned them fighting, because I asked the question last week, like, who do you think would win in a physical fight between Madison and Nancy? But I'm curious what Madison thinks they would be fighting about. David? Meanwhile, Nancy was tearing up to the confessional cam. She's upset because Madison is trying to make her the villain. Like her and David not working out was her fault. She said, "It's not my fault, and nobody wants to be lied to for 2 months." See, there it is. It's not my fault line again. I'm telling you, that's all she really wanted to prove all along, that their marriage wasn't crappy because of her. On Afterparty, when Keisha asked her if she would have done anything different in their marriage, I thought it was very interesting that she said, "I wish I would have been more open minded in the beginning because David is not a horrible guy. And I wish I would have leaned into having a friendship with him more. It's hard to say that because I know how it ends." It kind of sounds like, looking at how Madison is with David, Nancy feels like she may have missed out on something with him, like a friendship at the very least. But for those of you who are in my comments insisting that Nancy treated David the way she did in the beginning because she saw the traits we saw in the end, I'm still not buying it. Nancy is consistent. She maintains that David is not a bad guy. Of course, we all have an ugly side to us, but that doesn't mean we show it all the time. He handled getting caught sticking his hand in Madison's sugar bowl horribly, but it doesn't sound like that's how he behaved before he got caught. Madison and David. So later, these two went for a little date to a tattoo shop to get David's ex-girlfriend's name covered up. Something he should have done before he walked down the aisle, if you ask me. So David asked Madison how she was doing, and she said, "I'm violently hungover." These two stay in them streets. I guess they have that in common, though. So while the artist was working on David's tattoo, Madison asked David, "Where's the craziest place you ever had sex?" And before David could even answer, she said, "I bet mine is crazier than yours. And you know this because you two have probably already had this conversation while laying in bed." So Madison said, "Mine was on a Ferris wheel." Okay, so she killed 2 birds with 1 stone on that one. She joined the Mile High Club and a sex in public. Congratulations. Oddly enough, I could have gone the rest of my life without ever knowing that. So later, Madison and David met up for ice cream or yogurt or something cold and dairy adjacent. And David was giggling like a little schoolgirl, talking about how he can't wait for dessert and how much he enjoyed the dessert he had this morning. Okay, catch me up. Are we still pretending y'all have only hugged, or are we pretending to believe this was your first time having sex? Like, where are we in the scripted version of your relationship right now? So then Madison got all deep and reflective, talking about how taking things to the next step physically makes me feel more connected to you, opposed to the last few years where hooking up with guys just didn't feel the same. Yeah, casual sex doesn't typically lead to connection and marriage. So later we see these two at a fancy restaurant for Madison's birthday dinner. Talk about fish out of water. They did not look like they belong there. I think they are more into the bar scene. So the waiter brings Madison a drink, and the fizz or froth on her drink says, "You look so damn fine. I just want to eat you up." Well, there's the text she claims she never got. Too soon, though, David, and very tacky. So David said, "I thought you would enjoy that." Then she started reflecting on Alan, saying, "He'll make a great husband for someone, just not for me. And I'm willing to put in work for the right marriage. He just wasn't it." Now, that makes perfect sense. But where was all this honesty throughout the season, though? I mean, David and Madison even discussed getting married in the future. These are not conversations of people who have just been chatting on the treadmill at the gym the last couple of weeks. Clearly, they've had hours of conversation and spent a lot of time together. Enough time together to feel comfortable topping off the evening in a hotel room. The room looked like a purple Mardi Gras threw up in there, but I love purple, so I'm actually not mad at the balloon overload. So David told Madison, "I love you." And Madison, she said it back. I hope for their sake this works out. Otherwise, they look crazy. Now, I'm not mad at their relationship like some of the comments are under my videos because at the end of the day, they are on a TV show that is set up to entertain the viewing audience. Whether or not they build a relationship is secondary as far as production is concerned. I've spoken to previous cast members and I've heard other previous cast members say it just feels like they're taping a show and not in a marriage. Now, keep in mind, the weddings we see are staged for us. They get legally married usually the following Monday at a local courthouse in front of a judge. They show up for taping like they would a job. They have to arrive at a certain time, get mic'd up, lighting tested, and get some directions from producers where they're going to sit and what they should talk about. There's a crew of about 5 people around them throughout the taping. It's much more of a TV show than a marriage. I think the show treats the marriage license as a gimmick. So I can see how it's possible for David and Madison to not take their marriages seriously. That still doesn't excuse the lying and the hurt they caused. Karla and Juancho. Juancho and Karla went to the shared apartment to pack up their things. And Juancho was like, let's be friends. And Karla's like, let's just chill. To the confessional cam, Karla said, I didn't come here for friends. I would like to close the chapter on this relationship and focus on myself and move on. Meanwhile, Wancho told the confessional cam he knows they're not going to be the best of friends, but they could be cordial and meet up quarterly or bi-quarterly. Quarterly? Bi-quarterly? Dude, are you talking about Karla or your car insurance payment? Camille and Thomas. So these two decided to move into Thomas's apartment. See, I told you them not knowing where they were going to stay was a fake storyline. I will never be convinced that Camille was able to pivot from going back to her apartment to moving in with Thomas within 6 hours of learning the plan. So Thomas and the part in his hair had it all planned out. Camille could park in his parking space. He'd park further down the street. She can have the key fob until he gets one from the manager's office. Then he immediately moved his suits out of the closet to make room for her stuff. On Afterparty, Thomas said they're already planning to get a bigger place together. So much for this no plan storyline. Camille's lingerie finally made an appearance. Well, underneath the robe, Karla was showing more skin at the group meetup than Camille was right here. Nancy, Drew, and Karla. So Nancy and Karla met up for a little divorce chat. They sat down to process their marriages, and naturally the conversation turned to a very important question. Do we even have to tell people we've been married before? Okay, that's a valid question. Get those marriages annulled, ladies. So Karla figured it out quick. She said her marriage was never consummated. So in my mind, it doesn't count. Girl, marriage isn't a free trial. You can't just act like it never happened because you didn't activate all the features. But Nancy agreed. And then when the waiter walked over, Karla told him, my marriage was never consummated, so it doesn't count. The waiter was like, okay. And then Nancy started laughing and said, me too. I'm not going to lie. I kind of like this version of Nancy. I liked this scene. We got to see more of the playful side of their personalities. Madison and her dad. So Madison sat down with her dad, and allegedly for the first time, she finally told him that instead of falling in love with her own husband, she fell in love with someone else's. Those are my words, not hers. And you would think this would be a moment of shock or concern, but nope. Dad was fully on board. He's like, oh, you're happy? Cool. Love that for you. I mean, not in those exact words, but really, like, this is the first time hearing this news and you have no follow-up questions, like nothing. Let's rewind to the day after the wedding, shall we? Remember when her dad asked Alan if he'd be open to taking an STD test? Sir, clearly you were questioning the wrong person because your daughter was the one doing the extracurriculars. Just saying. Emem and her date. So Emem went on a date. She said this is someone she's known since the 5th or 6th grade, and they reconnected on social media. However, People magazine interviewed her about this relationship. They quoted Emem as saying, being from the same neighborhood and understanding one another made our match easier. She added, having met for the first time on a blind date Neither one of us could have expected things to blossom into the love we share now. Love at first sight is possible. So, did they meet when they were kids or did they meet on a blind date? Did the producers change the plot line for the show to try and not make Emem look as bad as this situation really is? I'm going to say yes. I believe so. So they're at dinner, right? And when Emem asked him where he lives, and he said, right now, I'm staying on my sister's couch, I was done. Check, please. Game over. And technically, he's still married because he's going through a divorce. Then, come to find out later, he has 2 kids. So Emem met a man on a blind date who lives on his sister's couch, is in the middle of a divorce, and has 2 kids. Girl, every bit of that is a blazing hot red flag. Where are Emem's girlfriends? Come check on your girl. So he says he's a lieutenant at a fire department, has a real estate broker license, and is a volunteer coach for some type of program. But he can at least get a studio apartment before you start dating. If he's sleeping on the couch, there is not room for him where he's staying. I have so many questions for this man. No, sir, that math ain't mathing. Emem, Karla, and Camille. So Emem, Karla, and Camille met up at Emem's place, just casually catching up when, boom, Emem's new man, Brandon, showed up. Emem talked about how they've gone on one date and they're going to take their time, take things slow. So Brandon started talking about his last marriage. He was in complete darkness. And after his relationship, there was no light at the end of the tunnel. Well, maybe you should have paid the electricity bill. I'm sorry, I'm just not feeling it. So anyway, he said there's no light at the end of the tunnel. Then all of a sudden, I saw the light. And the light was Emem and her money. Okay, he didn't say the money part, of course. So Emem loved that analogy. She said, the light was me. All right, girl, calm down. So Emem and Brandon had to abruptly leave to go on a date, and Karla and Camille stayed behind. They were at Emem's house, though. I'm sorry, when I leave, all y'all gotta go. Cameras and producers and everybody, get out my house. But Karla was so funny. She was not buying the fairy tale. As soon as they walked out, Karla was like, I'm sorry, but he's got to have more of a light at the end of the tunnel than MM. That's the only light you got? What are you bringing? Honey, a red flag. And honestly, she's not wrong. Karla, I'm with you, child. I'm all for Emem being happy, but take your time, girl. Get to know this man. Emem and her cousin. So Emem met up with her cousin. Emem told him about Brandon and that he was married for 10 years and is getting divorced. Now, did Emem and the cousin grow up together? Shouldn't he know or be familiar with Brandon? In any case, the cousin had questions and he don't play. I was so ready for her cousin to meet Brandon and light him up. Emem allegedly surprised her cousin by not telling him Brandon was going to be there. On cue, just as the cousin was saying he had questions for Brandon, Brandon walks through the door. I was like, let's go. I know this cousin's going to get him. So Brandon was trying to say all the right things to impress the cousin. The cousin said something like, oh, you're trying to impress me with your words because just a few months ago, Bubba Smith tried to do the same thing, aka Chi-Chi. But that was it. The cousin let him off the hook. Chi-Chi had his act together more than this man, and he gave Chi-Chi the business. Where are the questions about, are you able to take care of yourself, let alone your 2 kids and a girlfriend? How long have you been living on a couch? Why are you dating when it sounds like you just left your wife of 10 years? Like, take a beat and get over the marriage. Who's vetting this dude? So this is where we learn Brandon has 2 kids and kind of reluctantly said he's open to more if Emem wants some because she doesn't have any. But Emem said she's not in a rush. Girl, please take your time and do not have this man's kids right away. Get to know him. Eventually, the cousin left and the producers pulled Brandon aside and asked, what's next for you and Emem? And right on cue, Emem conveniently walked in. And Brandon hit her with, perfect timing. I wanted to tell you something. Then he took a knee. Will you marry me? And without a single ounce of hesitation, no thoughts, no pause, not even a let me think about it, she said, yes. Then the producers pulled her aside and was like, are you not scared at all? And Emem said, I'm not scared. He made it clear that he wants this forever. Yeah, they changed this storyline because if Emem knew this guy for 20 years, why would they ask if she was scared? So later, the two of them went ring shopping and color matching outfits. Emem picked out a ring, and before the clerk could ring it up or take the tags off, Brandon grabbed it and dropped to his knee again and asked Emem to marry him again. But this time he had the ring, he said. Emem said yes again, but this time she was more emotional. So on Afterparty, Emem said this was love at first sight. She doesn't really know him, but she knows how he makes her feel. She's never been treated like this before. So Keisha asked how long of an engagement they will have, and she said as long as it takes to get a divorce. I want to be happy for Emem, but I am skeptical. Juancho and Allen. So Juancho and Allen met up to talk about life after decision day, and Allen casually dropped that he's been out there on the dating apps exploring his urges. Urges? Who talks like that? Needs, curiosity, but urges? Okay. So he was like, man, these girls are using all these acronyms like BDSM. Well, why not? That's because you're on the dating app that uses all those acronyms, sir. But Madison, you missed out, girl. Your boy Allen over here is a freaking them sheets. Thomas's birthday party. Camille planned a get together for Thomas's birthday party. The entire cast showed up, so we know there's going to be chaos. Madison and David were already there playing pool. Emem brought Brandon and was walking around flashing her engagement ring. Meanwhile, to the confessional cam, Nancy said, I'm going to be honest that I'm a little concerned about the engagement, that it happened so soon. Like, what's the rush? Coming from someone who just got married at first sight, that's kind of saying a lot. At least there is some sort of vetting in the married at first sight process. Then Emem turned to Madison and was like, so what's going on with you and David? And Madison launched into her speech about how they're trying to be intentional and how they're setting boundaries, blah, blah, blah. Overhearing all of this, Alan, Nancy, and Karla were sitting there rolling their eyes practically in unison. Alan said to the girls, you want to get shots? Because clearly alcohol was the only way to survive these shenanigans. Then Alan was like, how come she couldn't say all this before? That's the question I wanted Keisha to ask her on Afterparty. Hopefully someone on the reunion special will. Then David randomly stood up and was like, I don't mean to cut you all off, but I got to go to work. And Karla, an icon as always, hit him with, ciao, ciao. And Nancy said, see ya, losers. Of course, Nancy's statement was out of line, but I laughed. I think because of the way David and Madison walked out of the other event so cocky. They didn't see that coming and didn't know how to respond. So David let Madison know he was going to handle it, and Madison told him to be nice. He went over to Nancy and Karla and asked if they had anything to say, and they both shook their head no. So he said, again, I apologize for how I handled everything. I think you're a great woman, and I wish you nothing but the worst. Just kidding. Just giving a little nod to Emem's playbook. He said, I wish you nothing but the best. And then he took off. So it seemed like as soon as he left, Chi-Chi rolled in late as usual, and he was walking around greeting everybody when Brandon made a beeline for him like a man on a mission and introduced himself like, hey, how's it going? I'm Brandon. And Chi-Chi looked at him like, okay, and? Then just a few minutes later, Brandon came back again, this time to formally let Chi-Chi know, I'm Emem's fiance. Chi-Chi looked at him like, good luck with that. So the group asked him if he wanted to drink, and he was like, nah, I gotta go. I have a date. Now, did he really have a date, or did he just say that to try to make it look like he's out in them dating streets catching fish too, like Emem's not the only one? So Emem walked over to Chi-Chi and asked, can I borrow you for a sec? And Chi-Chi said, no, thank you. I'm good. Girl, why would you set yourself up like that? But Emem was committed to speaking her speak. Since he wouldn't step to the side with her, she issued a public apology for how she responded to the relationship, meaning her I wish you the worst letter, and how things didn't work out. And she really hopes that he takes her apology to heart because she really does care. That felt like a weird thing to do in front of her couch man, but he's not going anywhere, so there's that. On Afterparty, Emem said that one of the things she regrets most is the letter that she read to Chi-Chi. So that's why she did that. To the confessional cam, Chi-Chi was saying today was validation because all along he was feeling that she just wanted someone who was ready to be married. And if he's ready, that she would marry them. She just wants a plug and play husband. And this situation is the proof. Then he chuckled and said, "In 3 weeks, this won't last either, but whatever." Now, I want to know the timeline of all this because Chi Chi and MM were estranged for a long time on the show. Was she chatting with this guy when the things started to go downhill in the marriage, maybe? Or did she truly meet and get engaged to him within 2 weeks? I'm trying not to side with Chi Chi, but he might be right about the plug and play husband. There it is. I said it. I'm moving on. So meanwhile, Alan was talking about a text from Madison where she invited him to meet up and have a talk. And Alan was like, "I don't really need to. I don't see a point." And Madison said, "Well, the point would be to have a conversation one on one since all of our chats have been in a group setting." Girl, what more do you have to say? You don't think you lied or did anything wrong. So are you looking for an apology from Alan? So he said he wishes nothing but the best for her and David, but during that whole thing, he took a hit. So meanwhile, back in the peanut gallery, I spotted Brandon and Emem sitting in a booth in their own little world. Brandon spit on his finger to wipe something off of Emem's shirt. Where's a napkin, a wet wipe, a sliver of toilet paper? I can't do it. I'm not ready for this couple. To the confessional cam, Camille said she feels very fortunate to have married Thomas. She can see why they were matched, and she hopes 50 years from now they can tell their grandkids about the crazy way they found love. Aww. And with that, the regular season is over. This season was more entertaining to watch than some of the last few seasons to me. I think all of the seasons kind of ebb and flow, though. I still have a lot of questions for MM and Madison. I hope most of them get answered during the reunion special. Based on the previews, it looks like it's going to be a good one. Now, we have 2 episodes of the reunion special. Then, where are they now still to go before season 18 is completely over? Now, don't forget, season 19 will be on the Peacock Network. I haven't heard a premiere date for that season yet, but when I do, I'll let you know. In the meantime, that's all I have for now. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in my next video.